Kutafuta penzi litatoka wapi? Sasa mekupata, nitakufumbata.
Ale baba huyo katoka kazini, zawadi mkononi kaleta na usio umenirekodi.
This is KTN News.
Former NYS Deputy Director General Aden Harake and Hassan Nur, who chaired a tender committee at the Ministry of Devolution and Planning, have been arrested. The two were picked up this morning and are being processed to be taken to court after warrants for their arrest were issued on Friday. They failed to appear in court when former Planning Principal Secretary Peter Mangiti was charged with conspiring to defraud the government of 47 million shillings. Mangiti, Harake and Nur are accused, together with other members of the Ministerial Tender Committee, of failing to adhere to procurement laws in the awarding of a tender to Blue Star Enterprises for automotive engineering training material. Well, thank you so much for staying with us. This is News Center. We continue on with our coverage, and we're keeping an eye on very many different developing stories that are taking place. Remember, we're following keenly what is happening in Uganda, specifically in Kasese. One of our journalists, Joy Dorimbera, was detained yesterday, and we understand that she's still detained. The Uganda spokesperson, police spokesperson, was just speaking to us shortly a few moments ago, and he mentioned that she's going to be released on bond, but that is set to happen. That has not yet happened. She is still in police custody. We'll keep an eye on that developing story. All right, now the Mombasa High Court ordered the arrest and prosecution of Interior CS Joseph Nkaissery for the destruction of a yacht used to traffic heroin worth over 20 million shillings. Chief Magistrate Julius Nangia has asked the DPP to prosecute Nkaissery together with 4 other senior government officials for blowing up the crucial exhibit without court orders. The destruction of MV Baby Iris was witnessed by President Uhuru Kenyatta and Nkaissery in August 2015. Other officials present were CDF Samuel Mwadhedhe, Foreign Affairs PS Monica Juma, and Coast Regional Coordinator Nelson Marwa. All right, so let's stay with that story and bring in my colleague once again, Francis Ontoma, to talk to us about this development. Ontoma, what do we know? What is the latest about this appearance, this court order, rather? All right. Don't have Francis Ontoma, but then let's just come to studio and speak to Duncan Okach, who is an advocate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Betty.
Now, this is such a twisted order that has been made. I mean, this is, prosecution of some very senior government officials. Is this really going to happen?
Betty, I think that is a million-dollar question, whether it could happen. And ideally, we say that the courts don't issue orders in vain and don't act in vain. When the moment the court realizes that an order will actually be issued and it will be in vain, the court will actually be very judicious in terms of issuing such an order. However, here comes an order that requires the Inspector General to arrest what I would actually say his boss, his seniors, and the enforcement of such would actually put him in between a rock and a very hard place. But the question that that particular order begs is, one, does that court have the authority to do so? And a point to correct is that it's not even the High Court that gives such an order. It is the Chief Magistrate's Court, which is even lower than the High Court. But we look at the Constitution. and we look at Article 245, and we say that it is clear that the Inspector General cannot get directions in as far as enforcement of his duties, not from the CS himself, not even from the courts. He can only get directions in terms of investigations from the Director of Public Prosecutions. That brings us to Article 157, the Director of Public Prosecutions. The Director of Public Prosecutions can equally not get any orders in terms of how he will carry out his mandate, not from the courts, not from the CS, not even from the President himself. Okay. Therefore, we find ourselves in a place where this court's order is actually a bit weird, even to us as legal practitioners.
So, okay, I mean, if you say that, what are we as Kenyans supposed to, to get from it? So then what is the end game? Because, I mean, the courts have, been on the receiving end that they do not, they're not carrying out their mandate, they're not, prosecuting people. Even the president himself came and said that, there are people who are letting down some of these cases down to do with corruption and other issues. So, I mean, what next?
Betty, Honorable Nangea has actually found himself in a very precarious situation based on the acts of the government itself. He has been charged with the responsibility of enforcing the law in as far as the accused persons are concerned. He needs this particular exhibit, that is the yacht. Yeah. Unfortunately, the government, despite his clear orders that yacht be preserved at least and until he's through with it in as far as this case is concerned, then it can be destroyed. But the hurry to actually destroy it raised a lot of eyebrows, and it is actually contemptuous in the eyes of the court. And that is where the court has inherent powers to punish anyone whose acts are contemptuous of the court, and it has happened several times. And I think because of the frustration, you saw at a point that this magistrate actually opted out of this particular case. He was actually forced to come back. When he came back, he actually issued these orders, and he is actually trying to say that I'm in between a rock and a hard place. You tell me to actually sit in as a magistrate in this matter, yet my own orders are not being respected by the executive. Okay. Therefore, there is no respect, and that's why such orders can be given, which will still show there will be no respect even for that order itself.
So, Duncan, let me ask a question. I mean, when it comes to such a difficult situation, I would hate to be in his place right now. Is there a superior citizen, or are we all equal when it comes to the law? Is it that this is a superior citizen, senior government officials, they're not under the law? I mean, how does it work? Are we all treated the same when it's such a high-profile individual who's on the other side?
Betty, the law and our law is very clear. Our constitution is very clear that all of us are equal under the Constitution, even the president himself. The only immunity he receives is during his tenancy as the president. After that, he can actually be pursued for even acts he actually he committed when he was the president. And ideally, if you look at it at this particular point, the issue will be the powers that the court have in actually pursuing these particular high top officials. Yeah. And that is why I'm saying this court lacks that particular power in terms of directing the DPP and directing the Inspector General to arrest and the DPP to prosecute.
So if it was another court, maybe the High Court, that this would have passed?
Not even the Supreme Court.
Not even the Supreme Court?
No organ, not even the President, I've told you, has the power to direct the DPP on what to do. The DPP can direct the Inspector General to investigate, but that is where it ends. The Inspector General has his own choice in terms of liberty to choose whether to now arrest after investigation. The DPP will decide whether he has enough to prosecute. But the court cannot come in and say, you have to arrest these people, unless it is exercising its inherent powers under what I've told you we call contempt proceedings, which will call for the arrest, and these particular people will be brought in that particular court. It is not for a separate prosecution process, which I think is what maybe the court may have indicated or intimated, but may not have been captured aptly.
Okay, so that, you've mentioned the issues to do with contempt, and it brings me to my next question. Have, courts pronounced themselves effectively in matters of contempt? Because this is not the first time we're seeing, the courts, the orders being ignored. You remember that for a long time, we were waiting for Mutai Iringo to bring himself to court or to appear, in court. But, it took so long, yeah? So, I mean, when it comes to matters of contempt, have our courts pronounced themselves effectively?
Betty, you are very right that there's a challenge there. And the challenge, I put it straight at the doorstep of the executive, because they seem to be disobeying court orders and court directions without any remorse, without any attachment to the same, without any respect to these particular courts and the court orders. And you had the former Chief Justice actually came out and complained and said that it's very hard for the judiciary to execute its mandate when they